So I'd like to share with you another of the projects that we have developed in Bristol County, and we would like to share with everyone else in the county, around the state, around the world, the nation, everywhere. Fear can be paralyzing. Parents, family members, and friends of suicide attempt survivors live in fear, but they remain in the shadows, silent, isolated, and almost invisible. And that's no different for the families of those who self-injure or struggle off and on with suicidal thinking, but may never attempt to die. It's a problem. And there's no national campaign for those who remain in the shadows. We have a Grand Canyon gap in a public health field that is dedicated to preventing suicide. And there's no research yet available to begin to identify how many people have really been impacted. So my big data and science evidence friends will cringe, but if we take 44,000 who died by suicide in 2015 and multiply that by the ridiculously low number 25 that we're given to work with to identify suicide attempt survivors, and then multiply that by 10, just because, it's out of the hat, not really. Okay, so that represents parents, grandparents, a sibling or two, maybe one good friend, throw in the cat and the dog, and we end up with a potential of 11 million people just like me who don't fit in anywhere in the world of suicidology, or as Dr. Bart Andrews would like to call it, the world of lifeology. We're about living. And I get that language change. I'm not about people dying. I am the family of one attempt survivor and a friend to many others. I'm about keeping people alive. On page 35 in the National Alliance for Suicide Prevention's 2014 publication, The Way Forward, it says, one page by the way, did you notice that? Recommendation 2.3, under program, develop, evaluate, and promote programs specifically intended to help the family and friends of attempt survivors. It further states that it would be helpful to develop coping strategies for families and friends to avoid burnout, especially in consideration of their vigilance and help efforts. And still, there has been no national campaign announced or launched in the 3 years since The Way Forward was released. What are we waiting for? And some of the few materials that are available encourage caregivers like me, family and friends of suicide attempt survivors, to go become trained in basic prevention and awareness concerns for their loved ones. But nothing has been presented on a national scale to help us become better informed about our own long-term self-care. I've spent the last 4 years listening to other people like me, and there's a common denominator, and the points that come out, or denominators if you want, and the points that come out are that we're isolated, we're not acknowledged as in need of emotional or psychological help, even if it's only a couple of times a year for that help, like getting together in a workshop or something. The next is that we lack sufficient support resources. Yeah, that means there are none, nada, nothing. And that the vigilant and help-giving efforts noted in The Way Forward can result in a devastating traumatic stress and fear-driven anxiety. That's traumatic stress with a capital T. Fear-driven anxiety. In Bristol County, we've been working on options since 2013. And in 2015, implemented a community-based project that may not be the answer, but offers a starting point to open up the conversation and recognizes the need to address these concerns in a simple retreat-style workshop. We share that the journey to freedom from fear is peppered with sadness and tears, laughter and love, chaos and serenity, frustration and reflection, insight and inventory, ours, not yours, and eventually can bring resilience, comfort, and a quiet place within. Much needed quiet place within. But it's a lonely battle for those of us struggling to help a loved one who is a suicide attempt survivor. And the process we went through raised the similarities experienced by victims of domestic violence, of which I'm one, and the families of loved ones fighting addiction with the same emotional and psychological challenges of family and friends of attempt survivors. There's a commonality across all three areas. However, in order for this segment of the population, 11 million at least, to be the powerful and caring army we need to fight suicide, we first need to coax them out of their own shadows and break the silence they remain chained to because of prejudice, discrimination, and irrational shame. Way to go, society, that we put that stigma on the families of suicide attempt survivors. And we do know that this group, my family, must heal itself first, let go of the unspoken anger and resentment, the paralyzing fear, learn that control is not love, and that we can't fix this by trying to be perfect ourselves or asking our loved ones to be perfect. And that's just to name a few of the emotional and psychological and spiritual collateral damage that has been done. And I keep going back to the origins of ACOA. I'm probably the only one old enough to remember it. It was in the late 70s, early 80s, and that is the Adult Children of Alcoholics. That was developed for those who didn't fit in, sound familiar? Didn't fit in anywhere else in the recovery process. And with that said, I do not believe we need another 12-step program. So this retreat style workshop that we have here in the county is This the Night, Finding Inner Peace. We have a workbook. We have a companion documentary titled Voices from the Shadows. And again, we don't profess that this project is the answer, but we do believe it can help coax more people out of the shadows and into the light of living fully. And that is one of the best protective factors I know of.